I'm Margaret, 68 years old, and I never thought my own son would leave me shivering on his doorstep during a snowstorm. After decades of financial support and love, being deliberately locked out broke something inside me. As a retired bank executive with access to their accounts, I made a decision that night. If they could leave me in the freezing cold, I could freeze every single one of their bank accounts. Before I share what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself when family takes you for granted. My son William was always the light of my life. I raised him as a single mother after his father walked out when William was just 3 years old. Despite the challenges, we formed an unbreakable bond, or so I thought. I worked my way up in the banking industry, starting as a teller and eventually becoming a senior executive at one of the largest banks in Boston. Those years taught me everything about financial management and security, skills that would later prove crucial in ways I never anticipated. When William met Diana 15 years ago, I was genuinely happy for him. She was charming, intelligent, and seemed to make my son happy. Their wedding was one of the proudest days of my life, and I welcomed Diana into our small family with open arms. I even helped them with a substantial down payment for their first home as a wedding gift, nearly $50,000 that I'd been saving for years. The birth of my grandchildren transformed my world again. Thomas came first, followed by Lauren 3 years later. Being a grandmother gave me a new purpose in life. I babysat whenever needed, attended every school event, and established college funds for both children, contributing $500 monthly to each account. My retirement income was comfortable, and nothing made me happier than investing in my grandchildren's future. For the first few years, everything seemed perfect. Sunday dinners at their house became our tradition. Diana would cook, William would grill in the summer, and I'd bring dessert. The grandchildren would run to the door when I arrived, shouting, "Grandma Maggie is here." Those memories still warm my heart, even after everything that happened. The changes came gradually. About 5 years ago, I noticed Diana becoming increasingly irritated by my suggestions about the children's education or household matters. Her smile would tighten when I arrived, and she started scheduling family activities without including me. William noticed but would shrug it off, saying, "Diana's just stressed about work, or she's going through a phase." As a financial expert, I naturally offered to help with their money management. William had always struggled with budgeting, a trait he unfortunately inherited from his father. When they mentioned financial stress despite their combined substantial incomes, I offered to review their accounts. Diana was hesitant, but William convinced her it made sense given my background. We set up joint access to their family emergency fund and vacation account, and they added me as an authorized consultant on several others. I helped them structure their finances, create savings plans, and make smart investments. Thanks to my guidance, they appeared to be building solid financial security. Yet as their financial situation improved, Diana's resentment toward me seemed to grow proportionally. She began making comments about interfering mothers-in-law in my presence and joked about how I was too involved in their lives. When I brought homemade cookies for the grandchildren, she would remark that they had too much sugar. When I bought them educational gifts, she would say I was trying to control their education. William's behavior changed too. My once affectionate son became distant. Our private lunches became less frequent, then stopped altogether. He began screening my calls, often taking days to respond to messages. When I asked if something was wrong, he would dismiss my concerns, blaming work pressure or family obligations. But I could feel him pulling away, choosing Diana's side in the subtle power struggle I never wanted to be part of. Still, I persisted in trying to maintain our relationship. I reduced my visits from weekly to bi-weekly, called less often, and made a conscious effort to withhold advice unless directly asked. I bought gifts only for birthdays and Christmas. I tried everything to accommodate their apparent need for space while staying connected to my son and grandchildren. The financial entanglements remained, however. I continued overseeing their accounts, helping them manage their money. I paid for Thomas's expensive science camp and Lauren's dance lessons when they claimed they couldn't afford these activities. I covered the repair costs when their roof leaked last spring, and the emergency veterinary bill when their dog needed surgery. My retirement savings were gradually diminishing, but I told myself it was worth it to support my family and see my grandchildren thrive. By last Christmas, the tension had become impossible to ignore. Diana barely spoke to me during the holiday dinner, and William seemed uncomfortable in my presence. The grandchildren, now teenagers, were absorbed in their devices, the days of excited greetings long gone. As I drove home alone that evening, I wondered what I had done wrong, how my loving family had transformed into distant strangers. Little did I know that the worst was yet to come, and that a cold January evening would finally reveal the painful truth about my place in their lives. January in Massachusetts can be brutally cold, and this year was particularly harsh. The Sunday after New Year's, temperatures had dropped to 15 degrees, with weather reports warning of an approaching snowstorm. Despite the forecast, I was looking forward to our regular Sunday dinner at William and Diana's house. After the strained Christmas gathering, I hoped the new year might bring a fresh start for our family. I arrived at their colonial-style home at exactly 5 o'clock, the agreed-upon time. Flurries had just begun to fall, dusting my coat as I walked from my car to their front door with a homemade apple pie in hand, William's favorite since childhood. Through the large front windows, I could see lights on throughout the house and movement in the kitchen. I smiled, anticipating the warmth inside as a refuge from the biting cold. I rang the doorbell and waited. No response. I could hear voices inside, music playing, the sounds of a normal family evening. Thinking they hadn't heard, I rang again and knocked firmly. Still nothing. The wind picked up, sending a shiver through my body despite my heavy winter coat. I tried peering through the window next to the door and caught a glimpse of Thomas walking through the living room. He glanced toward the door, then quickly looked away and disappeared down the hallway. A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. I pulled out my phone and called William. It went straight to voicemail. I tried Diana's number with the same result. Even the home phone, rarely used but still connected, rang without answer. I sent a text message. "I'm outside your door. Is everything okay?" No response. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The snow began falling more heavily, accumulating on my shoulders and hair. My fingers grew numb inside my gloves as I clutched the pie, now cold in its container. The temperature was dropping rapidly with nightfall, and the wind cut through my clothing like icy needles. My arthritis, always worse in cold weather, made my joints throb painfully. Still I waited, unable to believe what seemed increasingly obvious. Through gaps in the curtains, I caught occasional glimpses of family life continuing inside. Diana moving between rooms, William sitting at the dining table, even Lauren setting what appeared to be dinner places. They were having their Sunday dinner ritual without me. Despite seeing me through the windows, despite knowing I was standing in the freezing cold. After 45 excruciating minutes, I saw Diana look directly at me through the kitchen window. Our eyes met momentarily before she deliberately pulled the curtain closed. That single action confirmed what I had been denying to myself. This wasn't a misunderstanding or oversight. They were intentionally leaving me outside in the freezing cold. The realization hit me with physical force. I stumbled slightly on the icy porch, nearly dropping the pie. Tears sprang to my eyes, instantly cold on my cheeks. After 1 hour and 10 minutes of waiting, with snow now falling heavily and the wind howling around the eaves, I finally accepted defeat. My fingers were so numb I struggled to type a final message. "I see you're busy. I'm going home. Please call me when you can." I turned and carefully made my way back to my car, now covered with 2 inches of snow. The drive home was treacherous and terrifying. The storm had intensified faster than predicted, with gusting winds creating near whiteout conditions. My hands shook on the steering wheel, partly from cold, partly from emotion. Traffic crawled along the highway as visibility decreased. What should have been a 30-minute drive took nearly 2 hours of white-knuckled concentration. I kept replaying the image of Diana closing the curtain, the deliberate erasure of my presence. By the time I reached my empty house, the temperature had dropped below 10 degrees, and my body felt frozen to the core. I cranked up the thermostat and ran a hot bath, trying to warm my aching limbs. As I soaked in the steaming water, the emotional pain finally overwhelmed the physical discomfort. I sobbed until I had no tears left, the betrayal cutting deeper than the cold ever could. That night, I developed chills and a persistent cough. By morning, I was running a fever. My doctor later confirmed I had experienced mild hypothermia followed by a respiratory infection from the exposure. As I lay in bed the next day, weak and heartbroken, not a single call or message came from William or his family. The pie I'd made with love sat untouched on my kitchen counter, a symbol of everything that had gone wrong. What I didn't know then was that this cruel rejection would soon be compounded by discoveries that would shake the very foundation of our relationship and force me to take action I never thought possible against my own family. The day after being left in the cold, I was still battling fever and chills. My neighbor Rachel had kindly brought over homemade soup after seeing my car in the driveway, and knowing I rarely missed my church volunteer shift on Mondays. I hadn't told her what happened. The humiliation was still too raw. Around noon my phone rang. It was Jessica, my closest friend since college days, whose daughter Samantha was friendly with my granddaughter Lauren on social media. "Margaret, are you sitting down?" Jessica's voice had that careful tone people use before delivering bad news. "There's something you need to know." What Jessica showed me next turned my physical illness into something far worse. She forwarded screenshots from Lauren's Instagram and Thomas's Facebook pages from the previous evening. The very night I had stood freezing on their doorstep, William and Diana had hosted a dinner party. Not just any dinner, but an elaborate celebration for Diana's parents' anniversary, with extended family and friends in attendance. The photos showed a beautifully set table for 14 people, platters of gourmet food, champagne bottles, and a professionally made anniversary cake. There were smiling group pictures in the living room, the same room where I had seen movement while standing outside. Lauren had captioned one image, "Perfect family gathering," with a heart emoji. Thomas had written under another, "Great night with the real family." The timestamp showed these were posted at 6:17 p.m., exactly when I had been shivering on their porch. "There's more," Jessica said hesitantly. She forwarded another screenshot, this one from a group chat that Samantha had been included in. It contained messages between Lauren and her cousins from earlier that day. "Grandma Margaret thinks she's coming for dinner tonight," Lauren had written. "Isn't she?" someone had replied. "Mom says she needs to learn boundaries. We're having Grandma Diana's parents' anniversary instead. Mom told Dad not to answer her calls." "That's cold," wrote another teen. "Mom says she'll leave eventually," Lauren responded with a laughing emoji. My hands trembled as I scrolled through more evidence of the deliberate deception. Diana had posted photos too, thanking everyone for making our special family celebration perfect. There was even a picture of William raising a toast, smiling broadly, completely unbothered by the knowledge that his mother was standing outside in a snowstorm. As if this weren't painful enough, Jessica then forwarded a screenshot of a conversation between Diana and her friend that had been accidentally posted to her public Facebook page instead of sent as a private message. Diana had written, "Margaret finally left. Stood out there forever. William was worried, but I told him she needs to learn we have our own family traditions now. His mother thinks she can buy her way into everything with her money. Might need to block her number for a few days until she gets over it." The friend had replied, "Good for you. Standing your ground. Mother-in-laws need to know their place." Diana had responded, "Exactly. William agrees but doesn't have the spine to tell her directly." The physical pain of my illness paled in comparison to the stabbing betrayal these discoveries inflicted. This wasn't a misunderstanding or oversight. It was a calculated, cruel exclusion. A public humiliation deliberately orchestrated by Diana with my son's complicit agreement. They had planned to leave me standing in the freezing cold, while celebrating with others inside their warm home. They had discussed it, agreed upon it, and even boasted about it online. As I struggled to process this information, my phone began to ping with messages from other friends and church members who had seen me waiting outside William's house. My neighbor Frank wrote, "Saw you standing on William's porch for over an hour last night while driving by twice. Everything okay?" Another church friend messaged, "Caroline lives on William Street and said you were outside during the worst of the storm. We're worried about you." The humiliation deepened knowing that others had witnessed my rejection. Yet not once, not a single time, had William or Diana reached out to check if I had made it home safely through the blizzard. No call to explain the situation. No text to apologize for the miscommunication. No acknowledgement whatsoever of what they had done. As the day progressed and my fever rose, a different kind of heat began building within me. The hurt was transforming into something else. Indignation, then anger. For decades I had sacrificed for my son. I had supported his family financially and emotionally. I had respected boundaries, accepted diminishing affection, and continued to give unconditionally. And this was how they repaid me, with deliberate cruelty, public mockery, and callous disregard for my well-being. That evening, as I lay in bed reviewing their social media posts again, I noticed something in the background of one photo that caught my attention. Behind Diana, partially visible on the kitchen counter, was a shopping bag from Bergdorf Goodman, an expensive department store. Just 2 weeks earlier, Diana had called asking if I could help pay for Thomas's school trip because they were really tight this month. I had immediately transferred $2,000 to their account. This observation triggered something in my banker's mind, a suspicion that demanded investigation. Despite my illness, I opened my laptop and began reviewing all the financial documentation I had access to as their advisor. What I found would change everything about how I viewed my relationship with my son's family, and ultimately lead me to a decision that would shock them to their core. With 4 decades of banking experience, examining financial records was second nature to me. Despite my physical discomfort, I spent hours that evening meticulously reviewing every account I had access to. What I discovered left me stunned and heartsick. The emergency fund I had helped them establish and contributed to regularly showed withdrawals for items that were hardly emergencies. Diana had spent $1,200 at a spa resort weekend with her friends last month. There was a $3,000 charge to a luxury watch retailer that coincided with William's birthday. Nearly $5,000 had gone to a landscaping company for an ornamental garden installation, all while they claimed they couldn't afford to fix their garage door. The vacation fund, intended for family trips, had been used for a getaway that Diana and William had taken to Bermuda. Without the children and certainly without telling me. They had spent over $7,000 on this secret vacation, while telling me they couldn't afford to visit William's aunt in Chicago when she was recovering from surgery. Most disturbing were the children's college accounts. While I had faithfully deposited $500 monthly into each fund for years, the balances were significantly lower than they should have been. Regular withdrawals had been made over the past 2 years, with the money transferred to William and Diana's personal accounts. They had been systematically siphoning off the educational funds I had established for my grandchildren. I discovered credit card statements showing Diana had purchased designer handbags, expensive jewelry, and high-end clothing, all while claiming they were struggling financially. William had made multiple large cash withdrawals followed by deposits to online gambling sites, a habit I never knew he had developed. The financial picture that emerged was clear and devastating. William and Diana had been systematically taking advantage of my generosity while living far beyond their means. They had manipulated me into providing regular financial support under false pretenses. Every time they had claimed financial hardship, they had been lying to extract more money from me. I pulled out my own financial records next. Over the past 5 years, I had given them over $120,000 in emergency assistance, not counting the regular contributions to the grandchildren's education funds. That money had come from my retirement savings funds I had worked hard for decades to accumulate. I had been willing to sacrifice my own financial security to help them, only to discover they had been exploiting my love and generosity. I sat back in my chair, physically ill from both my cold and the emotional shock. The depth of the deception was almost incomprehensible. This wasn't just about being left in the cold for one night. It was about years of calculated manipulation and exploitation. The next morning, still running a fever but fueled by a new resolve, I called my friend Barbara, a retired attorney who had specialized in family and financial law. I explained the situation in detail, including my access to their accounts and what I had discovered. "Before you tell me what you're planning," Barbara said carefully, "let me clarify what you can and cannot legally do." She explained that accounts where I was merely an advisor or had been given access credentials could create legal complications if I made changes without their knowledge. However, any account where I was a primary or joint holder gave me full legal rights to control those funds. The children's college accounts, which I had established and was the custodian of, were fully under my legal control. And of course, any money I had personally contributed could be documented and potentially recovered. Document everything, Barbara advised. Every contribution you've made, every account you have legal rights to, every instance where they requested financial help under false pretenses. Create a paper trail that proves the pattern of behavior. For the next 2 days, I meticulously gathered and organized financial records. I created spreadsheets tracking every dollar I had contributed to William's family over the years. I documented instances where they had claimed financial hardship while making luxury purchases. I compiled screenshots of their social media posts showing expensive items and experiences they had claimed they couldn't afford. Throughout this process, I wrestled with my conscience. These were not actions I ever imagined taking against my own son. Despite everything, I loved William and my grandchildren deeply. I questioned whether I was overreacting to one painful incident, whether my hurt was clouding my judgment. But the evidence was undeniable. The financial exploitation combined with the deliberate cruelty of leaving me in the freezing cold revealed a pattern of disrespect and manipulation that could not be ignored. They had taken advantage of my love for too long, and allowing it to continue would only enable further mistreatment. After careful consideration and another consultation with Barbara to ensure everything I planned was legal, I made my decision. I would not seek revenge, but I would establish boundaries and protect myself financially. I would temporarily freeze their access to funds I controlled until we could have an honest conversation about both their behavior and our financial relationship. Barbara helped me draft a brief, factual document explaining my actions that avoided accusations while clearly stating that financial support would be paused pending a family discussion. We included provisions ensuring the grandchildren would not suffer educational consequences and that true emergencies could still be addressed. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Barbara asked as I finalized my plan. "This will likely cause a significant family conflict." I thought about Diana closing the curtain when she saw me standing in the snow. I thought about William raising a toast while I fought my way home through a blizzard. I thought about years of being manipulated and taken for granted. "The conflict already exists," I replied firmly. "They just didn't expect me to acknowledge it or stand up for myself. It's time they understood that their actions have consequences." With my plan in place and the legal implications understood, I prepared to take action that would send a clear message to my son's family. If they could leave me out in the cold, I could freeze their financial comfort just as quickly. On Thursday morning, 5 days after being left in the cold, I felt well enough to execute my plan. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, a notepad for documenting each action, and a cup of strong tea. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the grandfather clock that had been in my family for generations. I took a deep breath and began. First, I transferred all funds I had personally contributed to the joint emergency fund into a new account under my name only. This amounted to nearly $37,000 that I had added over the years. I left their contributions untouched but removed my access to that portion of the account. Next, I contacted the administrators of the children's college funds, where I was the custodian. I didn't withdraw any money but changed the account settings to require my signature for any future withdrawals and requested notifications of any access attempts. I wanted to protect these funds for their intended purpose, my grandchildren's education, not punish the children for their parents' behavior. For the vacation account, which I had funded approximately 60% of, I withdrew my portion and left theirs intact. I removed myself as a joint holder on their credit card accounts where I had been added as a backup. I carefully documented each action, noting the time, the amount, and the legal justification. Throughout this process, I maintained a clinical detachment, approaching it as I would have any financial restructuring during my banking career. This wasn't about revenge. It was about protection and establishing boundaries. I was simply reclaiming what was legally mine and ensuring proper oversight of funds intended for specific purposes. By noon, I had completed all the necessary changes. I sent the formal notification letter Barbara had helped me draft to William and Diana's email addresses, with a separate paper copy sent via certified mail to create an official record. The letter explained in neutral language that I had restructured our financial arrangements, and would be happy to discuss restoration of the previous arrangements after a family meeting. Then I waited. The first indication that they had discovered the changes came at 2:17 p.m., when my phone showed Diana's incoming call. I let it go to voicemail, not yet ready for that conversation. Her message was confused and demanding. "Margaret, something's wrong with the accounts. I tried to use the credit card for a purchase and it was declined. Call me back immediately." 20 minutes later, William called. His voicemail sounded concerned rather than angry. "Mom, there seems to be an issue with the bank accounts. Can you check if something's happened with your bank? Please call back when you can." By evening, the tone had changed dramatically. Diana's voice was shrill in her third voicemail. "What have you done? We can't access any of our accounts. This is completely inappropriate and possibly illegal. Fix this right now." William's messages grew increasingly desperate. "Mom, please call back. Diana is freaking out. We had payments scheduled that aren't going through. Whatever is happening, we need to talk." I continued documenting each call but maintained my silence. The letter would arrive tomorrow, and I wanted them to have time to process the information properly rather than react to my voice. Friday morning brought a barrage of text messages. Diana wrote, "If you don't fix the accounts today, we're consulting a lawyer." William's message was more conciliatory. "Mom, whatever's upset you, we can talk about it. Please just call me back." At 11:43 a.m., I received confirmation that the certified letter had been delivered and signed for by Diana. 30 seconds later, my phone exploded with incoming calls. I let them go to voicemail, then listened to the messages. Diana was incensed. "How dare you freeze our accounts? This is financial abuse. You have no right to control our money like this." William sounded shocked and hurt. "Mom, I don't understand why you would do this. If this is about Sunday, there was a misunderstanding. We thought you weren't coming because of the weather forecast. Please call me so we can fix this." Their attempts to minimize what had happened only strengthened my resolve. After allowing them several hours to process the letter, I finally answered when William called again at 5:30 p.m. "Hello, William," I said calmly. "Mom, thank God. What is going on? Why would you do this?" His voice was a mixture of relief and agitation. "I thought you might be concerned about me after leaving me standing in the freezing cold during a snowstorm Sunday night," I replied evenly. "I developed hypothermia and have been ill all week, in case you were wondering." There was a pause before William spoke again, his voice defensive. "We thought you had canceled because of the storm. When we didn't hear from you, we assumed you weren't coming." "William, I stood on your porch for over an hour. I called all your phones. I texted you. I saw Thomas look directly at me through the window. Diana closed the curtains when she saw me. Please don't insult my intelligence by claiming you didn't know I was there." Another silence, longer this time. "Mom, I don't know what to say. Things have been complicated lately, and Diana thought it was acceptable to leave a 68-year-old woman standing in 15-degree weather during a snowstorm while you hosted a party inside." I finished for him. "And you agreed with her." "It wasn't like that," he protested weakly. "It was exactly like that, William. I've seen the social media posts. I know about the anniversary dinner for Diana's parents. I know everything." His breathing changed, and I could almost see him processing the realization that his deception was fully exposed. "About the accounts," he began, changing tactics. "Mom, we have bills due. The mortgage payment is scheduled for Monday. This isn't fair to punish us financially, because you're upset about a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I repeated. "Is that also how you characterize the fact that you and Diana have been systematically taking advantage of my financial generosity while lying about your circumstances? Like claiming you couldn't afford Thomas's school trip while Diana was shopping at Bergdorf Goodman. That's not. She just. Or withdrawing money from your children's college funds. Money I contributed. To support your lifestyle and William's gambling habit?" His sharp intake of breath told me he hadn't expected me to know about the gambling. "I'm not punishing you, William. I'm protecting myself and ensuring the money I've contributed is used for its intended purposes. As my letter explained, I'm happy to discuss restoration of the previous arrangements after we have a family meeting where we can be honest with each other." Diana won't agree to that, he said quietly. She's already talking about lawyers. That's her choice, I replied. But as Barbara, my attorney friend, has confirmed, I've done nothing illegal. I've simply reclaimed control of my own contributions while leaving your funds untouched. If Diana wants to explain to a judge why she thinks she's entitled to my retirement savings after leaving me to freeze on your doorstep, she's welcome to try. The conversation ended shortly after, with William promising to figure something out. I wasn't sure what that meant, but I had made my position clear. The ball was in their court now. That evening I received a text from my granddaughter Lauren. "Grandma, why can't I access my college fund? Mom and Dad are freaking out about money stuff." I called her immediately, wanting to reassure her directly. "Lauren, sweetheart, your college fund is safe. I've just changed the settings so the money can only be used for your education, which was always the intention. This is between your parents and me, and I promise your future is secure." Her response was telling. "Oh, Dad said you were trying to control us with money like you always do." The manipulation extended to the children too. This would be more difficult than I had anticipated, but I was committed to seeing it through. The truth needed to come out, no matter how uncomfortable the process might be. Saturday morning, I was enjoying a quiet breakfast when the doorbell rang repeatedly, followed by insistent knocking. I knew before opening the door who I would find on the other side. William stood on the porch looking haggard, with Diana beside him, her face tight with anger. The irony of them showing up unannounced at my door after what they had done wasn't lost on me. Still, I invited them in calmly. "Would you like coffee?" I offered, maintaining the composure I had practiced during countless tense banking negotiations. "We don't want coffee," Diana snapped. "We want to know what gives you the right to hijack our finances." We moved to the living room, where Diana remained standing while William and I sat down. The power dynamic was immediately apparent, Diana in attack mode, William uncomfortable but passive, me steady and prepared. "What gives me the right," I began evenly, "is that they are my finances. I've simply reclaimed control of funds that I contributed, while carefully leaving your own money untouched." "You've been controlling us with money for years," Diana accused. "Using your financial help to buy yourself a place in our family. Well, we don't need your money or your interference anymore." William winced. "Diana, please. Let's just talk this through reasonably." I maintained my calm. "I find it interesting that you're characterizing my generosity as control, Diana. You certainly never expressed that concern when accepting the down payment for your house, or the regular contributions to your children's education, or the emergency funds when your roof leaked, or the money for Thomas's school trip 2 weeks ago, while you were shopping at luxury department stores." Diana's face flushed. "You've been spying on us?" "I've been reviewing financial records that I have legal access to," I corrected her. "Records that show a pattern of requesting financial assistance from me while spending lavishly on non-essentials." William leaned forward. "Mom, whatever you think we've done wrong, this isn't the way to handle it. Cutting off access to accounts without warning has put us in a difficult position." "Without warning?" I echoed. I reached for a folder on the coffee table and removed several items. "Here's a screenshot of your wife deliberately closing the curtains when she saw me standing in the snowstorm on your porch. Here are social media posts showing the dinner party you were hosting while I developed hypothermia. Here's the text message from Lauren saying, 'Mom says she'll leave eventually,' with a laughing emoji." I laid each piece of evidence on the table between us. William's face grew pale as he looked at them. "And here," I continued, "is the medical report from my doctor confirming mild hypothermia and a respiratory infection from prolonged exposure to freezing temperatures." Diana crossed her arms defensively. "You're overreacting to one incident. We had an important family event and assumed you'd understand. An event you deliberately didn't tell me about," I pointed out. "And no, this isn't about one incident. This is about a pattern of behavior." I produced another folder. "These are financial records showing withdrawals from the children's college funds being transferred to your personal accounts. Here are credit card statements showing luxury purchases made days after you claimed financial hardship to me. And here, William, are records of your gambling transactions, $17,000 in the past year alone." William's head dropped into his hands. Diana's expression flickered between anger and alarm. You had no right to compile all this information, she insisted. I had every legal right, I corrected her, and a moral obligation to protect myself from further exploitation. The tense conversation was interrupted by the sound of the back door opening. A door only family knew was always unlocked. Grandma! Thomas's voice called out, followed by Lauren's. Are you home? My grandchildren appeared in the living room doorway, looking surprised to find their parents there. Both teenagers appeared uncomfortable, shifting their weight nervously. We wanted to check if you were okay, Thomas explained. You haven't been at Sunday dinner for weeks, and then Lauren said something about the college funds. Diana immediately tried to take control. This isn't a good time. We're discussing adult matters with Grandma. Actually, I said gently, I think it's important the children understand what's happening. They deserve to know why their college funds have been secured. Diana shot me a warning look, but I continued addressing my grandchildren directly. Your college funds are completely safe, I assured them. I've simply changed the settings so the money can only be withdrawn for educational expenses, which was always the intention of those accounts. Lauren looked confused. But Dad said you were trying to punish them by cutting off all our money. That's not accurate, I explained. I've only reclaimed control of my own contributions while making sure your educational future remains secure. Thomas looked at his parents. Is that true? Grandma's not taking our college money. William couldn't meet his son's eyes. It's complicated, Thomas. It's actually very simple, I said. I love you both and want to support your futures. But I needed to ensure the money I set aside for your education is used for that purpose. Diana interrupted sharply. Children, wait outside. This is between the adults. But Thomas, always the more perceptive of my grandchildren, didn't move. This is about last Sunday, isn't it? When you didn't come to dinner but Grandma Diana's parents did instead. The simple question hung in the air, heavy with implications. William looked stricken. Yes, I answered honestly. I did come to dinner. I stood on your porch for over an hour in the snowstorm while you had a party inside. No one answered the door or my calls. Lauren's eyes widened. But Mom said you knew about the change of plans. Diana cut in quickly. We thought Grandma Margaret wasn't coming because of the weather. It was a simple miscommunication. Thomas frowned. But I saw you looking out the window, Mom. You said to ignore the door because... That's enough, Thomas. Diana snapped. The tension in the room was palpable. William finally spoke up, his voice strained. Kids, please give us some time to talk with Grandma privately. We'll explain everything later. Reluctantly, Thomas and Lauren retreated to the kitchen, but the damage was done. Their presence had forced a moment of truth that could no longer be avoided or minimized. After they left, William looked at me with tears in his eyes. Mom, I don't know what to say. I knew you were out there, but Diana insisted we had to set boundaries, that you were too involved in our lives. I didn't have the courage to stand up to her. I never thought you'd get sick from it. Diana's face hardened. Don't you dare put this all on me, William. You've complained for years about your mother's interference. Expressing occasional frustration is different from leaving her in a snowstorm. William shot back, showing the first real spine I'd seen from him in years. Their argument escalated, revealing the deep fissures in their relationship that had been projected onto me. Diana accused William of being weak and dependent on his mother. William countered that Diana's resentment and spending habits had created most of their problems. Years of unspoken tensions erupted between them while I sat silently witnessing. Finally, Diana grabbed her purse. I'm not staying here to be attacked by both of you. When you're ready to fix the financial mess you've created, Margaret, let us know. She stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. William remained seated, looking deflated and ashamed. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. The grandfather clock ticked loudly in the silence. I never meant for any of this to happen, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I've been caught between you and Diana for so long, trying to keep everyone happy. Somewhere along the way, I lost myself. And I lost sight of how much you've done for us. Why, William? I asked simply. Why has Diana resented me so much? Why have you pulled away from me? He sighed deeply. Diana has always been insecure about our relationship. She felt you judged her parenting, her housekeeping, everything. Instead of addressing it directly, I tried to appease her by creating distance from you. Then our financial problems started, partly from her spending, partly from my problem with gambling. We became dependent on your help, which made her resent you more, which made me pull further away. It's been a vicious cycle. For the first time in years, my son was being completely honest with me. Despite everything, I felt a glimmer of hope. I'm so sorry, Mom, he continued, tears streaming down his face now. For Sunday, for taking advantage of your generosity, for not being the son you deserved. I was weak and cowardly. I reached across and took his hand. I'm not without fault either, William. Perhaps I have been too involved at times. But nothing justified what happened Sunday night or the financial deception. He nodded, acknowledging the truth of my words. What happens now? He asked quietly. That depends on what you want to happen, I replied. I'm willing to work on rebuilding our relationship, but there need to be changes. Real changes, not just promises. By the time William left 2 hours later, we had outlined preliminary conditions. Family counseling with a qualified therapist, financial transparency moving forward, and a gradual restoration of access to funds contingent on demonstrated responsibility. He agreed to speak with Diana and the children, though we both knew that conversation would be difficult. As I closed the door behind him, I felt emotionally drained but also lighter, as if a burden I had carried for years had been partially lifted. The hardest conversation was over, but the real work of healing our family was just beginning. 2 weeks passed with minimal contact from William's family. Diana had refused to speak with me directly, communicating only through terse text messages rejecting my conditions as controlling and manipulative. William called occasionally, sounding tired and conflicted. The grandchildren sent tentative text messages, clearly unsure where their loyalties should lie in this family fracture. During this time I focused on my own healing, both physical and emotional. My respiratory infection gradually improved, and I returned to my volunteer work at church and my weekly bridge club. My friends rallied around me, particularly Jessica and Barbara, who took turns checking in and providing much-needed perspective when I questioned my decisions. You did what you needed to do, Barbara reassured me during lunch one day. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for those we love is to stop enabling destructive patterns. I maintained the financial boundaries I had established but ensured William knew that true emergencies would never go unaddressed. I won't see my grandchildren suffer, I told him firmly. But I also won't continue to fund deception. 18 days after our confrontation, Thomas and Lauren appeared at my door one afternoon after school, without their parents' knowledge. We missed you, Lauren said simply as I welcomed them inside. Over hot chocolate and the cookies I always kept on hand for them, my grandchildren shared their perspective on the family situation. Things had been tense at home, with frequent arguments between their parents about money, about me, about long-standing issues suddenly exposed. Dad told us everything, Thomas admitted. About leaving you in the snow, about taking money from our college funds. He's really torn up about it. Lauren nodded. Mom still says you're trying to control everyone with money, but I heard her crying in their bedroom last night. I think she's scared about what happens next. Their insight surprised me. I had underestimated how perceptive teenagers could be, how capable of understanding complex adult situations. We're sorry, Grandma, Lauren added, reaching for my hand. For what happened to you. For not knowing what our parents were doing. You have nothing to apologize for, I assured them both. This is between your parents and me. My love for you has never wavered and never will. Before they left, I reminded them that their college funds were secure, and that I would always be there for them, regardless of what happened with their parents. Their visit helped heal a part of my heart I feared might remain broken forever. 3 days later, William arrived alone at my door. His appearance shocked me. He had lost weight, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He looked like a man who had been forced to confront difficult truths about himself and his life. Diana's moved in with her sister temporarily, he said after declining my offer of tea. We're taking some time to reevaluate our marriage. The money issues, the gambling, her spending, how we've treated you. It's all connected to deeper problems we've ignored for years. He had come, he explained, to offer a more complete apology and to discuss next steps. Without Diana present to interrupt or deflect, William spoke with a raw honesty I hadn't seen from him since he was a young man. I enabled Diana's worst impulses toward you because it was easier than standing up for what was right, he admitted. And I hid my gambling from both of you because I was ashamed. Every time we asked you for money under false pretenses, I told myself it was temporary, that I'd make it right eventually. But I just dug us deeper into deception. We talked for hours about patterns established years ago, about his fear of conflict, about Diana's insecurities and resentments, about my own tendency to overstep at times. For the first time in years, we were having a real conversation without pretense or performance. William agreed to individual therapy for his gambling addiction and expressed willingness to attend family counseling if Diana would participate. He had already contacted a financial advisor to help create a realistic budget based on their actual income, not supplemented by my contributions. I don't know if Diana will agree to all this, he confessed. She still sees your actions as an attack rather than a boundary, but I'm doing it regardless. I need to be a better man for my children, for myself, and for you, Mom. His sincerity moved me deeply. This was the son I had raised, imperfect but fundamentally good, capable of growth and change when confronted with his mistakes. A week later, somewhat to my surprise, Diana agreed to attend a family counseling session. The first meeting was awkward and tense, with Diana initially defensive and William uncomfortable. The therapist, Dr. Reynolds, skillfully navigated the complex dynamics, establishing ground rules that allowed each person to speak without interruption. I feel like you've always judged me as inadequate, Diana finally admitted to me. Like nothing I did was ever good enough for your precious son and grandchildren. And I felt used and taken for granted, I responded honestly. Valued for my financial support but not as a person worthy of basic respect. Dr. Reynolds helped us identify toxic patterns on all sides, my occasional boundary crossing, Diana's resentment and financial irresponsibility, William's conflict avoidance and secret gambling. None of us was without fault, but acknowledging these dynamics was the first step toward changing them. Over the following months, we continued weekly sessions with Dr. Reynolds. Progress was neither linear nor easy. Some sessions ended with tears, others with strained silence. But slowly, incrementally, understanding began to replace accusation. On the financial front, I worked with William and Diana to establish clear, documented arrangements for any future support. I gradually restored limited access to certain accounts with specific conditions attached. The children's college funds remained securely designated for educational purposes only, with quarterly statements sent to all parties for transparency. William attended Gamblers Anonymous and individual therapy, taking responsibility for his addiction. Diana reluctantly agreed to financial counseling, where she began examining the emotional roots of her spending habits. They sold their oversized house and moved to a more modest home that better fit their actual budget without my subsidies. 6 months after that terrible night in the snowstorm, our family dynamics had transformed. Not perfect, not without occasional tension, but fundamentally healthier. Sunday dinners resumed, now alternating between my home and their new house, with clear expectations and boundaries respected by all. Diana and I would never have the warm, intimate relationship I had once hoped for, but we had developed a mutual respect based on honesty rather than manipulation. William had found his voice, capable now of standing up for what was right even when it created temporary discomfort. The grandchildren, witnesses to this difficult but necessary family reconstruction, learned valuable lessons about honesty, accountability, and the courage to address problems directly. As for me, I discovered strength I didn't know I possessed. At 68, I had finally learned that true love sometimes requires setting firm boundaries. That generosity without accountability can enable dysfunction. That standing up for myself didn't mean losing my family. It meant establishing a healthier foundation for our relationship. That freezing January night could have permanently fractured our family. Instead, it became the catalyst for painful but necessary growth. By freezing their access to my financial support, I had ultimately thawed the layers of deception and resentment that had been building for years. If you're facing similar family challenges, remember that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential for healthy relationships. Sometimes we must temporarily withdraw our support to create space for real change. And it's never too late to stand up for yourself, even against those you love most deeply. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took your generosity for granted? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life experiences about family challenges and personal growth. And remember, true family bonds are built on mutual respect, not financial dependence. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to address any painful family dynamics in your own life.